Hello, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Drone mania has taken over America, starting in New Jersey, my home state, where drones have been seen for weeks and weeks and weeks from casual observers. These things are described as the size of SUVs. They can come in swarms of dozens and dozens of them. There's great alarm. Congressman Jeff Van Drew, who's in my opinion, not the most MAGA member of Congress, but he is a friend of the president. And to his credit, he called out the federal government and demanded answers and information about what's happening. And even the president had commented that the government knows more and they should be transparent about it, or they should shoot them out of the sky. Now, Eric, what I want to get your reaction to is on a related story, this headline from the New York Post: drones spotted near at least 17 military bases located next to Chinese-owned land in the United States. Now, we know the stories over the past couple of years about China supposedly buying up farmland near strategic sites, military bases and installations of the United States in the U.S. American farmland. Now, according to the New York Post, they're using that property to run drones over top and likely, as they did with their weather balloon at the beginning of 2023, spying on our facilities. We covered this recently when there was a military base in Virginia who was getting this similar drone activity. The Biden administration's hands are tied because they're not going to shoot any of these down. They're not even following them to check their source or their intentions. Eric, let me get your reaction.
Yeah, the base you were talking about in Virginia, that's Langley Air Force Base, the home of the F-22, the best interceptor in the world. Never clear who was doing that or what was going on. My guess, more than educated guess on that, would be a Chinese drone, whether from offshore or from some random parking lot somewhere in the area. But that's definitely a probe. I don't know if all the drone activity in New Jersey, et cetera, is the same, or the problem is there's so many different parts of the federal government that are so completely uncoordinated and bloated. It's entirely possible it's somebody looking for something somewhere. And again, I guess this is where federalism and states, governors should assert that if you have some unknown flying object that enough people complain about and no one knows what the hell is going on, then send a helicopter after it. Send a fixed-wing aircraft to fly fast enough to get up next to it, to use a wingtip to smash the propeller, use a net under a helicopter to foul the prop. There's lots of creative ways to find and eliminate the threat with minimal risk to population underneath, but somebody needs to do that. And I think we have this, the sad thing in America is we have a paralyzed society of a lot of sheep and not a lot of sheepdogs who will actually go move to identify and deal with the threat. And that's why you have this kind of mania. Now, and I'm sure there's, yes, I understand it was along the flight path of Liberty Airport in Newark, so maybe there's some other aircraft involved. I don't know. I guess it's perhaps it's 5 or 10% truth and 90% hysteria. But for heaven's sakes, governors, take ownership of your airspace and say, I'm going to know what exactly is going on in my state. And I don't care if I knock your drone down, but you're going to clear it with an organized authority, because this randomness and causing the hysteria must end.
Oh, yeah, it is fascinating. I know you've been on the road overseas for a number of weeks while most of this hysteria has taken place. The governor of New Jersey held a briefing for elected officials across the state. My own sister happens to be the mayor of my hometown. She was the Trump-endorsed U.S. Senate candidate in 2024. She attended the briefing. She went back to her community, and she announced a briefing for the local community. She could pass on what she learned. 80 people showed up in this small town. They're out at night watching the skies. They've got high-tech cameras that they're using. I actually was in New Jersey driving on Route 78 West and observed one myself. It was clearly a drone in the sky above the highway. And there's a lot of speculation, that even Donald Trump speculated the federal government knows what these are, and they're not sharing it with us. There was speculation that there's some sort of someone lost some sort of radioactive content material recently, and that's what the federal government's out looking for. Whatever it is, whether it's from offshore, from a hostile actor, or what, nobody knows, and yet we all believe that the federal government knows more. And now we've got these. I think it's far more troubling, frankly, Eric, that we've got Chinese-owned farmland in the U.S. and they may be using it as a launch point for these drones. What do you suppose Donald Trump will do about that?
Well, here's what I would do if I was a mayor or a governor of that state with something unknown happening in my state. You can take. I don't think those drones are flying very fast. They're probably going 100 knots. Okay, a Cessna Caravan will go 175 knots level. There's all kinds of them used as jump aircraft. So you have a nice, big, wide open jump door that you can hang a shotgun out the side and fly up next to a drone and shoot the thing down. Or you can shoot it with a high resolution camera from very close and get very definitive pictures of what it is. The state police have helicopters that they use for search and rescue. They will all have a gimbaled EOIR camera. What does that mean? Electro-optical infrared, meaning a big night vision camera, a big day camera, and one that sees heat. So as you get credible reports of drones from your police officers moving around, they can give a approximate altitude, location, heading, and speed, and you can intercept that with a helicopter or a fixed wing and get pictures and take away some of the mystery of this. This is not rocket science, people. Come on.
It is interesting because a lot of state officials, they're expressing the concerns of their own constituents where nobody trusts the federal government. Alejandro Mayorkas, the impeached Secretary of Homeland Security, did his visits to the Sunday talk shows and basically said, well, I understand people's concerns, but there's really nothing to be concerned about. We don't really know the source of these drones and so forth. But I mean, this really does indicate two things to me. One is a sort of new threat that does exist because we may have terrorists in the U.S. that came through Joe Biden's open border who could use drone technology to attack citizens. And secondly, it's very reflective of the complete lack of trust in the deep state that the American citizens have, which is exactly why they voted the way they did in November.
Yeah, look, we have a real credibility gap, a deficit in America because we've had so much bloated federal government stuff doing so much stupid stuff for so long. No one really believes what is what anymore. But again, this comes back to, I guess, the principle of subsidiarity. Do something local, handling problems in the most local way is usually the best way. And you're right about the proliferation of drone capability and the threats it brings. There's a great book called the Sword of Achilles, Sword or Shield of Achilles, is by Bobbitt. But it talks about the technological explosion from mapping, communications, unmanned, everything you can imagine, precision weapon delivery, now in the hands of really everyone that 20 or 30 or 40 years ago would have been considered a super high-end, top-secret, government-only program. So it is that much more important for our local and state communities to be that much more resilient and capable because if we're waiting for the federal government to provide the solution, we're going to be waiting a very long time.
Yeah, there is really great wisdom to that. And I think people are just anxious for January 20th to get here because they know that Donald Trump will treat issues like this with much, much greater transparency. His chutzpah that he gets from Queens, New York. And he's already reflecting that in his observations. And an example of that, if I can sort of digress, is the way he has dealt with our neighbor to the north, Canada. We know that he threatens in a Truth Social post tariffs against Mexico and Canada, where they rely so much on our economy. And 3 days later, Justin Trudeau traveled to Mar-a-Lago to visit with Donald Trump. And after that, the president referred in a post to him as Governor Justin Trudeau of the state of Canada. Brilliant.
Yep.
But Trudeau is in big trouble. I think at a lesser degree, Macron in France is, and then in the UK, we are seeing, I think, a real shift against globalism. Do you agree?
Well, it's globalism, leftism, incompetence, which is almost, I guess, synonymous words. But yeah, what they've done to Canada and their economy and their complete out of control migration, and not only that, Mark, they're killing thousands and thousands of their own citizens, pressuring people that are like in their teens and 20s who are depressed to euthanize themselves. It's absolute evil madness. So yeah, change cannot come in fast enough in Canada. So yes, it's. But again, it comes back to Donald Trump is not our savior. Good man, happy we elected him, but it takes governors and mayors and all kinds of other people to stiffen their spine and to wake up and do their jobs and to not wait for for higher authority to do it. What made it great was individual initiative at the edge, at the bleeding, smoking edge of challenge and conflict. It took that kind of innovation. It is not one person that's going to lead us out of this. Happy, extremely happy he's in that role, but it takes tens of thousands of great, call it staff officers and sergeants, taking initiative, making it happen. I was so happy and relieved to see Daniel Penny found not guilty in that atrocious trial in New York City. It never should have been brought in the first place. I love that J.D. Vance, one Marine to another, invited him to accompany him to the Army-Navy game. I sent a fantastic message that if you are a sheepdog and you are protecting your fellow citizens, that the federal government has your back. That was an excellent, excellent move by J.D. Vance.
Yeah, and it's that symbolism. It's that picture that sends a signal that, business as usual is over. And by the way, it took those tens of thousands of patriots to get Donald Trump into this position so we can take our country back. And this push against globalism, I think, is an excellent sign that populism is going to spread around the globe, that peace and prosperity is coming back starting in 2025. But we're going to be right here on Off Leash to report to you all the developments, Eric's expert insights about what's going on around the world and in the U.S. And don't forget, visit our great sponsor, Unplugged, by going to unplugged.com/offleash. This is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Thanks for joining.